This is the final essay of a three-part series on my tributes to TT, Snow, and Fatty, who are my three grandchildren in Meemore. And Fatty being the last. Fatty, when I first met Fatty, which was 6.5 years ago, she was going to school with the middle child, Snow. On Wednesday, I had an article about her. And she was, the two of them attended a preschool. And when you look at, I had to, I guess it's because at one time Myanmar used to be called Burma, and it used to be a colony of Great Britain, kind of like the United States. And once they got rid of the British, the British language and a lot of their customs and things, and sometimes vocabulary, reflect English, as in England, the language. And so there are many, not just my family, but other people who will name often their children either using English names for children or like they could use names like Mary and Susie and whatever, but they also use names that have nothing to do with not repeating a name. They simply use a noun. Snow is Snow, the middle child's nickname, and Fatty is. It took me a while, like a couple of years before I'd be writing articles and talking about TT and her younger sisters, because I couldn't get over saying Fatty or writing about it. But when I first met her in preschool, and she was 2 years old, going to school with Snow, who was 4, and they were in preschool, she looked like what we call in America a butterball. She just, and I said something to Momo in one of my emails. I said, and she said, we named her because Coco's her husband. We named Fatty, called her Fatty, not necessarily because she was she was just a butterball, but they saw it as kind of a blessing that in a developing country where they don't have a lot of the stuff that we have, having a chubby little baby is kind of a good omen, a good sign. And so it's a way of being thankful for the child who's doing well. So the first time I met her, we talked for 10, 15 minutes, and 2-year-old kid isn't going to remember anything. But when I came back 4 years later, she now was 5 or 6 years old, and being the baby of the family, it's interesting. I explained the family. TT was the oldest child, and they had 3 children: TT, Snow, and Fatty. TT essentially is an only child. She was born, and there's 5 years between, at least 5 years between TT and Snow. And according to birth order, that kind of stuff. the second child, once it's been about 5 years or more, becomes the second firstborn. In other words, you have an only child and a firstborn, and Fanny being the baby. And so sometime I'll write about birth order again, but it's interesting to see the personality, because Titi and Snow, even though they are, Snow and then, or Titi and then Snow, there was so many years, or 5 years between them, that that both of them have similar personalities, in that they are very driven and want to get things done correctly and are caring and just. But Fatty is more the last born, who's just a kind of fun-loving kid, and Titi, when I came back the second time, has named me, and she named me Papa Al. And her next oldest sister, Snow, followed suit. Fatty would have nothing to do with that. She would yell as loud as she could, Popo G. And Popo G means in Myanmar great-grandfather. But Popo G was what they call in Buddhism in Myanmar a nat, N-A-T. And a nat is kind of like a spirit, but kind of a spirit that looks like a real person. And to try to describe it, it's hard for Westerners to imagine that kind of. We would, and I've often used this term. Nats are like saints for the Western world, but that's not absolutely correct. But that gives you an idea that they're considered venerable, important nats. So Popo G is a nat, and it also means great-grandfather. So she calls me that on the second trip. She would not call me Popo G, or Papa Al. And whenever she would call me Popo G, I'd grab a hold of her and tickle her and wrestle with her. And every time I did it, she would wind up 2 seconds later in my arms, and then looking up at me and go, and fluttering her eyes. One of the characteristics, I'm going to go on forever talking about her. One of the characteristics of anybody that lives in that area and closer to the equator have darker skin, and their eyes. There's nobody in Myanmar. No, there is one person, but she uses contacts. There's nobody that I ever saw in Myanmar that has blue eyes. If you look at my eyes, I have blue eyes and a black pupil. But they all have dark brown irises. And I don't think I've ever said this to Coco or Momo, but it was amazing to me how dark Fatty's dark brown, and then was the iris, and then the pupil in between, or in the middle of it, obviously it was black, so it looks like huge, big black dots in there. And then when she goes fluttering her eyes, it's just the cutest. But that's all. That was who I remember Fatty to be 2 years ago when I came back during winter break from teaching this past year. 2 years changed a lot. And Fatty, she's still a fun kid to be around. She's always goofing around, doing things and having fun with everybody. But we both the parents, Momo and Coco, are tour guides. And so what they did was plan a tour for the 5 of them and myself. And so we just went to various places, a couple places I wanted to go to, back to, that I'd been to before. But I told Momo, pick places. And we went we went to places that nobody in the United States had ever heard of. I mean, I bet you hardly anybody knows Tangier, which is the big city close to where they live. But we were out in small villages that really reflected what it used to be like 100 years ago. And every time we went to any kind of village or any kind of something that she wasn't familiar with, the first thing that Fatty would do is simply sit or stand and watch. And there are a number of pictures in my essay about her just standing and watching and processing what the woman was doing, weaving or talking to some long-necked women, and what strikes me about Fatty is her intense focus on trying to understand and to process something that she has not seen before. And she'll stand there. I mean, if you go over most of my photographs, not just in the essay, but anything that's up on the webpage, she'll be standing there looking at something, somebody or something. And it's not, I mean, it is a child, but that child is focused on what that person is doing. And she's obviously learning the process and understands and trying to understand the process. I've tried to understand all the reasons why younger kids interest me. And I think that the large part of my drive to watch kids in the United States or kids throughout the world is that that's going to be the next generation. And I want to make sure that I can do whatever I can to help people that I know in either the United States or overseas and help their children move along and be successful when they become the people who run the country and their communities and their society 15, 20 years from now. So I appreciate your time watching, listening to this video, and reading this essay.